Hello everybody. There's been a really interesting response to the Why Now video on the YouTube channel. If you remember, we talked about how we can use the figure of 8 to look at what we mean by the now and maybe consider why it's so important to stay in it. But there's been quite an interesting response. Originally it was simply part of what I was teaching, and there were so many people asking me to write it down and or talk about it again, that the best place I thought was to put it on here, and then people could access it as they like. But there's been a good response, and so I thought perhaps we should look at a few more things, not just about the now, but also about how we stay in it, and some of the tools that we use, and sometimes why we don't stay in it, and how that can work. So I was thinking about that, and one of the things I teach a lot as a way of staying in the now in a positive way, and learning to appreciate it in an everyday way, as opposed to when you're meditating and concentrating on your breath. This really is about as you go through your everyday life. One of the suggestions I make is that people begin a gratitude journal. And the reason I make this is that, one, there's a reasonable amount of evidence and a lot of people are talking about it around this, and two, experientially for me, it's really useful. Because what a gratitude journal is a way of sitting very quietly before you go to sleep at night and writing down 5 things that you're grateful for that day. And I know for me personally, especially through times of depression, it's been incredibly useful at making me focus on the fact that there are things to be grateful for, even if it's as simple as I made it through the day. And so what that then does is start to focus the mind on looking for things to be grateful for, because especially when you're in a bad place, you've got to think 5 things in your diary that night. And I really don't think I can feel any of them. I better find them because I've got to do it. And it really does start to bring a little bit of lightness into what can be a dark time. And then as you move forward and things become lighter, it becomes much more expansive. You can look back on the pages where it might be, I got through the day, and look at the pages where more and more you can see the things to be grateful for. It doesn't mean those things weren't there before. And again, it shows us how what we focus on tends to create, and we create more of it until we start to focus on something else. And so it's an incredible way of asking us to look at what is and celebrate it. So I thought at the beginning of the summer, well, maybe once I've been on holiday, we'll talk about that. And I was thinking about it. And it was a moment, and I had a moment of, when you have a profound moment, the most interesting things about it, profound moments, is that they are profound in and of themselves. Once that moment has happened, it is complete. And then to talk about it can never be the same as the profound moment. But we have to find a way of using words to describe things that feel indescribable. And so let's give it a go. So I was standing there, I was on a balcony on a cliff, looking out to the most beautiful scene of a smooth sea down below me. A beautiful sky, the sun was shining. I could hear my children playing in the pool when they were well. And behind me, my husband was reading a book. And I looked around and practiced gratitude. Or sort of so I thought. And I realised what I was saying to myself was, I'm so lucky. I'm just so lucky. And looked around at everything. And then when I really sat with feeling lucky, and there's no doubt in that moment, perhaps I was, I realised that it wasn't necessarily a good feeling, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought, but being lucky is great. It's similar to gratitude. I'm being grateful. I'm lucky. So I'm grateful, and I'm practicing gratitude by being lucky. It should feel good. And so I sat with it a bit more and thought, okay, what is this? Where is it? And first of all, I realised with lucky is that underneath it was some fear. That at some level, I'd been lucky to get here. In other words, in the past, in all the past, lucky old me had been lucky enough to be born here to do this, 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 which may well be true. But what it does, or brought up in me, fear that it may not have happened. And it also brought up in me a sense of undeservingness, which kicks into my whole self-esteem or low self-esteem process, which we're all going through whether we like it or not. And so feeling lucky, when I looked at it in the present moment, took me into the past and feared that this may not have happened, so therefore it took me out of the present, and also kicked into my unworthiness and contaminated this beautiful now moment with all of that. And then when I sat with it some more and looked into the future, I realised that lucky felt fearful because it could run out at any minute. I could have fallen off that cliff then, luck out, not lucky anymore. It could end tomorrow, next week, in a month, in a year, 10 years. Luck runs out. And you're lucky you had it, and you better be grateful for it because luck runs out. And there's definitely some things there about thinking that you deserve luck and therefore luck runs out because you don't deserve it. So luck became impermanent. Luck became something I had to be dependent on outside of myself. So when I felt lucky in that moment, all the fears of the past and the present and the issues that are within me are triggered. It was phenomenal. And so then I sat and instead I looked around and I just said, I am grateful. I'm grateful for my kids being safe in the pool and playing. I'm grateful for my husband, who is probably going to get a beer any minute now. I'm grateful for this sea, this sun, this view, the grass under my feet. And within that was a feeling not only of gratitude, but of being home. Gratitude felt solid. Gratitude doesn't ask me to account for why I'm here, being grateful for something. It doesn't say it might not have happened, even though it might not, who knows? The fact remains is that what is was this. And I could be grateful for it in and of itself. And that was it. There was no past to feel guilty about, to be unworthy of, to feel luckier than some or unluckier than others. There was no comparison. I could just be grateful for this. And in the future, as long as I choose it, gratitude isn't going to run out. You know, the only thing I'm responsible for and can be truly responsible for is my attitude. And if I make gratitude my attitude, ooh, that's quite good. Ooh, that's a good sentence. I'm going to write that down. If I make gratitude my attitude, it can never run out. I'm not dependent on luck. I can just be grateful and feel this solidity and this coming home wherever I am. Obviously, where I was then, easy place. I'm on holiday. Everyone's happy. Everyone's playing. Husband's got a beer. I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, appreciating a view that is so stunning. I stood there and had this moment. But I've had many days, and we've all had many days, where you feel like there's very little to be grateful for. But the fact remains is that I know that in my darkest day, I still wrote that journal. So I know I cannot run out of gratitude. And so in that moment, there was no fear or worry or thought that took me into the future. That at some point it might be better and I might be guaranteed not to run out of it. And so I could stand there and just be grateful for what is and not fear the past or try and create a different future. I could just be there with what is. And it was a whole new take for me on why gratitude allows us to be here in the now. And for that I was truly grateful.